As they were singing, I was sitting there imagining that they were here singing for us. And so until we get to the point where we have our live music with us, then each week as we play someone's music, I encourage us to visualize seeing that individual here and really having the sense of, their being with us. Okay, so today, partnering in changing times. A couple of weeks ago, in one of the messages, I said that the only thing that is changeless is change. If we take in the fact that change is always happening, then partnering in changing times is something that we always have the opportunity to do, because things are always changing. So when we think about the fact that things are always changing and what's ours to do in it, I ask us to think about what are we caught up in when these things are changing, when life circumstances are happening. I was reading an article this week, and it was talking about all the change that was going on, all the things that were happening that we probably just take for granted that they're occurring because they keep occurring. Financial challenges, war, hunger, the quality of our life with the cost of living changing, climate shifts, weather, things happening all over the country. The closer that we are to the things that are happening, I think the more we might be impacted by them. But when we're further away from them, when you have food on your table every day of the week, when you have a house that supports you and protects you, and when you have everything for the basic needs of survival, we don't think about as much. Even though it continues to be published in the media, and we continue to hear about it, it's just as though someone on the television was just going blah, 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 blah. Because we're going about our day-to-day business and the activities of what we're doing and not really paying full attention to the impact of these things in the world and what we might do to be a part of the healing process. So I don't know whether it was because I had my grandchildren this week for 5 days, but when I went home on Thursday and I woke up in the morning, it seemed like I really felt very blah. I heard the news and I was impacted by it in a negative way. It took me out of the sense of feeling secure, and it took me into that sense of almost a depression, if you will. And then I sat there, and my spiritual practices are very strong. And I sat there thinking about circumstances and things that were going on in life. And I have a philosophical way of when I get caught up in those kinds of circumstances of beginning to analyze and think about what I could possibly do to make a difference. And of course, when I think about what is mine to do or to be, it's as though I just want to get out there and join the various forces that are doing something to end world hunger, or to stop the climate changes, or to go with the Red Cross when they went to Boulder, Colorado to help the people up there, that were impacted by the rains and the storms and the floods and so on, specifically because I lived there. And I realized that I felt paralyzed, that I felt as though I didn't know which way to go because I had put all of these things together and was trying to figure out how to solve everything at the same time. So I kind of gave the credit to my demeanor to my granddaughters who wore me out. I figured I really wasn't in my quote-unquote right mind. So I spent several hours thereafter with Ernest Holmes in silence and reading and pondering. And as I was doing that, I remembered my childhood. And my father used to say, when we were at home or we were doing nothing or being slugs on the couch watching television, he would say to us, "Don't just sit there, get up and do something." And he probably meant something like, take out the garbage or do something or sweep the front porch or something like that. But it was the fact that we were sitting there and it looked as though we were being useless. And so when I was in meditation, I thought, I need to turn that phrase around. In the midst of us trying to do so much, we don't spend as much time as we might in the process of being. And the being nature is when we are in meditation and when we are in silence, when we are in prayer. And when we practice that on a regular basis, we take that aspect into our life. And so the statement, "Don't just sit there, do something," has now been reframed in my mind. Don't just do something, sit there. So I thought, with all of these things going on in the world, in order for me to reframe what I feel is mine to do, I must first be in a space where I recognize who I am and don't dwell on what's going on all over the world, but try to narrow it down to what's happening around me and how can I make a difference. Now, as we are living our lives, we sometimes respond to circumstances and situations in our life based on our past. We're making choices and dwelling on and reflecting on the situations. Well, things are not going to get better because they continue to happen. War is always going to be something that we're dealing with because it's always been something that we've had here. And when we dwell on that, we find ourselves caught up in the life of living in the past and living from the negativity of what we experienced. I don't have any control over what happens in the Middle East. So how can I have any impact on it? It's not like we're all going to go out and join the military, but we forget that there is something that we can do. You see, dwelling in the past does have something to offer us. It has the experience of the past to reflect upon and learn from and give thanks for. If we can find the gift, as I am prone to saying, find the gift in that experience and praise it. Find what it is that we learn from anything, of any experience in our life, and give thanks for it and put it in its proper place so that we can then move forward. If we stay in the past and we continue to dwell on it, what happens is we get stuck and we begin to stagnate. And the stagnation creates the process within us what can look like depression, or it can look like life doesn't matter. And we know what happens when water stagnates. Would you like to go swimming in a stagnant pool? No, you would look at it and you would say, not only would you have the awareness that you wouldn't want to swim in it and it smells, you'd want to probably do something different if you really wanted to swim there. That's the point at which you would take some action. So recognizing that there is value in our past and looking at what it is that we're finding the gifts and the lessons, we also want to look at the needs in any time that we're having shifting and changes and so on and so forth. When change is happening in our life, to do nothing about it would not move us forward. So taking the time to be and to allow ourselves to understand what's ours to do and look at what it is that we need. So what I would like to do is I'd like to take some opportunity to look at 3 options for meeting needs in changing times. We recognize that we're talking about taking action. And as we take action, we have to first realize that there is a source within all of life that's a part of who we are. That source being God. And God is always giving. Now, this is not an entity that we talk about. This is an energy. This is a dynamic force that lives and breathes through all of us. And if God is in the giving mode, we get to look at, are we in the mode of being willing to receive? And being willing to receive will take us away from the actions of the worrying and the doubts and the fears and the living in anticipation, which takes too much energy. And it takes very little energy to have faith and trust in our partnership with God. So as I talk about partnering in changing times and the needs that we have, the first thing that we must remember is that we want to partner with God to begin with. And if we're partnering with God, that means we step up our spiritual practices. So looking at the 3 ways or the 3 options of meeting needs, the first thing I wrote down here is meeting needs in changing times. Well, let's give up all the needs. And what's the impact of letting needs go unmet? Well, giving up your needs, giving up what you anticipate to receive, would put you in a space of acting like you don't matter, or you're not good enough, you don't deserve it, you're not in a space to receive from a space of worthiness, or you don't believe that it's possible. That when there are these changing times and your financial situation changes, because of the financial change universally, you find yourself saying, well, it's happening all over. So I have to just suck it up and accept that that's the way that it's happening. So giving up your needs is like sticking your head in the sand and ignoring your feelings and what really matters. It's almost like it's impossible to have my needs or my desires beyond the basic needs of food and water and shelter and security, basically. But anything beyond that, any desire that you would have, anything that would show that you're successful and that you're expanding from where you are, we believe that that's not possible, so we give up all those needs. The second thing in partnering in changing times, whether it's one person to another or whether it's a group of people on one side or another, we let go of one part of the needs. Okay, so let's say you're in a relationship and husband and wife, and the wife has this particular desire or need and the husband has this. And so you think that in the lack or the limitation and the worry and doubt about both people's needs being met, you give up the needs of one person. So one person is sacrificing, one person is being a martyr. Oh, I'll give it up because it's better to give than to receive. Okay? But over time, that person or that group, let's say there are two sides, 2 groups of people, and there's one side that wants this to happen, another side wants this to happen. Well, this side, for this to happen, would be less costly. So this side over here that wants something that would be more elaborate, they give it up for the good of the group. But in the meantime, they're not really in that space of having given it up. The same thing for the relationship, the husband and wife. After a while, it can turn into an anger or bitterness or not being feeling fulfilled. Okay, so the final thing is to look at discussing needs and reevaluate for all involved. This is what I call the win-win. And this can go on for a long time. And it's perfectly all right when 2 people in relationship or groups of people in partnership or relationship are willing to sit down and communicate and talk about what it is that they want to experience and continue to be the expression of God that each are, or that each are in the group, then you know with the creative ability that you have within you, that is your God nature, ideas are not limited. And so you continue to communicate and collaborate as ideas come forth without negating one or the other, but being willing to listen and to be open. And I talked a little bit about that, 2 weeks ago, the communication. And I think Max probably talked about that last week in talking about communicating in a partnership. It's very important to understand what is important to each person. Sacrifices and compromises. A compromise may be okay. A sacrifice is probably not okay. Because if you're sacrificing, you're really not willing to give up what it is that you gave up. But if you compromise, you have come to an agreement where what you're willing to give up, you're really willing to give up. So compromising, communicating, collaborating, talking together is very important in groups of people when changes are happening. And it is only through the communication and the collaboration that one can continue to move forward positively. Yes, maybe in the midst of all that there could be some bit of disagreement or a bit of conflict, but if you're open to be that God force, then you can listen to someone with an ear that is different than the judgment that you would bring from the personal sense of, judging the other person. So, the time is now. It's always now. Now is all we have. Yes, we have memory. Yes, the past never goes away. It becomes a part of our subconscious, and we're the ones who are responsible for making the decision about where the past is placed in our actions that we choose for the future. If we recognize that the past has happened, if we recognize that the experience of the past had some gifts and we learned things from them, then we can put those experiences in their proper place so that the learning that we had from it can be the key to move us forward. To believe that you have it. The song said, when you believe, miracles can happen. And when you believe that you have the power and the presence of God within you, when you know that you are a creative, dynamic force, then you can bring it forth. And then you begin it. To sit still, we've already said, is stagnation. So it is constantly about being and discerning, having the awareness of possibility, responsibility, and making choices to move forward. My suggestion is partnering on common ideas and goals. We are working right now here at the center to look at some ideas and setting some goals for what we would like to see and experience in this community. It is the responsibility of everyone who has an interest in this community to vision along with us, to vision with the Board of Trustees. And so as we get into doing some classes and having some meetings and practice, doing some spiritual practice, we will be talking about holding the vision, having the vision for what it is that we want to experience. I've already said, seeing every chair in this room filled with a warm, loving body. When you come in here on Sunday, you can hold that vision for us. When you see the chairs empty, look beyond the chairs being empty and see them filled the next Sunday. Know that this philosophy and this teaching that we are advertising to the community is a valuable resource, and begin to have common ideas and goals, and through that, ideas of how to go about doing it. So then we begin the experiment. We play off of the wisdom that we've learned from the past. I come in here as an outsider in this situation. I have ideas of building a church, and you are the community who really has to identify what it is that you want to experience here. And through our common vision, we allow those things to expand and to grow by taking action together and playing off of the wisdom that you've learned from your experiences in the past. Continue to communicate needs and be a part of the solution. There was a minister one time who said, anytime a person would come to me and say, I think that we should do this, 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 and I think that what it will do is generate this, this, and this, he would say to them, and are you ready to be in charge of that process? So I don't want to hold you back on your ideas, but what I want to do is encourage you to recognize the creative expression that you are and be a part of the solution. And so that's not just in conjunction with what's happening here at CSL. That's whatever is happening in the whole of your life. Who is it that you're partnering with? Whether it's spouses or fellow mates, family, friends, projects that you're involved in. It really is about seeing these possibilities as the creative expression that you are in anything that you want to become or that you are involved with. See yourself as the God expression that brings truth into the process. And to remember to use spiritual practice. We had a great discussion over here this morning in the study group about spiritual practice. And the master teacher said, pray without ceasing. And someone would say, oh my God, that means I would have to be in prayer 24 hours a day. How would I ever get anything accomplished? And the idea of pray without ceasing is to make spiritual practice such a common aspect in your life that you go from allowing yourself to sit silently and quiet to allowing yourself to recognize that all of your actions and activities throughout the day are divinely guided. You, as a God source, are allowing yourself to remember that throughout your day. And the more that you practice that, the more it becomes an indwelling process, just like riding a bicycle after a long period of time. And then when you hit a snag, you will catch yourself much more quickly because you are practicing on a regular basis. And so the part of the spiritual practice is don't just do something, sit there. I encourage you to find pods of time in your day